Hello, happy Monday, and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for July 14th, 2025. It's the 195th day of the year, the 28th Monday, and World Chimpanzee Day, created by the Jane Goodall Institute in 2018 to celebrate and bring attention to humans' closest living relatives, who sadly are now on the endangered list. The date marks the day that Dr. Goodall began her decades of studying the primates in Tanzania in 1960. On the food calendar today is hashtag National Mac and Cheese Day, a very popular comfort food that will hopefully bring you some comfort on this Monday after an insane weekend news cycle, which I am going to discuss in a little bit, but my job here is to bring you the highlights of Newsmax shows, Newsmax hosts, and Newsmax guests. So first up, Lydia Serrani on Sunday Agenda with House Speaker Mike Johnson reflecting on yesterday's anniversary of the Butler assassination attempt on then the Republican nominee for president, Donald J. Trump.
Speaker Johnson, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Glad to be with you.
So, we all remember where we were that moment that those shots rang out and the world held its breath. We wondered, oh my God, what just happened? Is the president okay? And then he pumped up his fist, fight, fight, fight. And then you tweeted the morning after that God protected President Trump that day. I mean, when you think about it, milliseconds, millimeters determined life and death for President Trump that day. So how else can you explain it but God, right? Right, Speaker?
Well, that's right. Look, there's no political leader in American history who has endured so many relentless attacks, even attacks upon his life, and remained so strong and resilient. And it's very clear, I mean, on two occasions, failed assassination attempts. His life miraculously spared on the world stage where everyone can see it. The president called me early this morning and we reflected upon this, about a half-hour conversation. We talked about the moment I was with him right after the second assassination attempt, just 64 days after the Butler, Pennsylvania tragedy, where they caught the gunman with the muzzle pointed out of the bushes on the golf course in Florida. And I sat with him, my wife Kelly and I sat with him for 2 hours and 45 minutes right after that event while they were trying to clear the security perimeter around Mar-a-Lago. And we just talked about this, how clearly God had saved his life, spared his life for a purpose. And he acknowledges that. He talks about it openly now. And he understands the weight of history upon him, the legacy that he will leave and the responsibility that he's been given to help save the country. And it's a very serious thing and a profound thing to be a part of.
Save the country, save the world. And you tweeted a short time ago that picture that you took with the president just a short time after he was almost killed by another would-be assassin in Florida. So it's just remarkable, just the resiliency that this man has. So many questions still unanswered. A lot of people wonder, how could it be that he acted alone? How could it be that he was on that rooftop, 25 minutes and nobody did anything? What do you say to people that are concerned that, the investigation hasn't gone far enough? This guy had to have had ties to someone else.
Well, the investigation is now in the hands of the FBI and the DOJ, and the House and Senate have done everything we possibly can to investigate it. We've turned over that information. A lot of that, I think the people involved were forthcoming, but there are as many questions as there are answers. And, the same is true for the second event, the one that happened just 64 days later, it's September 15th of the same year, an election year, when the guy was shot at by Secret Service, chased and apprehended. He's awaiting trial now. There's some very dangerous people in our society, and the rhetoric from a lot of politicians these days tends to inspire action by some of these crazy people, and we need to turn that rhetoric down, turn down the heat, get to the facts, and make sure that we're protecting our president and other elected officials to the best of our ability. I mean, there's always more to do.
House Speaker Mike Johnson on Newsmax yesterday. And if you were watching the Trump rally from Butler, Pennsylvania on Newsmax last year, you may recall that our Bob Brooks was the first on the scene and the first to be reporting on the shooting.
I was there. I went to the rally to talk about the issues facing Western Pennsylvania. I'm from that part of the state. I was sitting on the media riser about 30 yards right in front of the president when it happened. Yes, it was crazy. and tragic, with the president being shot in the head, Corey Comparator. He was killed and 2 others were shot and critically wounded. It's a moment I'll never forget. I initially thought our president was killed. None of us will ever forget it either. So the next day, though, I stayed in Butler to continue our coverage. And you know what the first thought was that came to my mind? How in the world did a 20-year-old kid from the suburbs of Pittsburgh outsmart the highest levels of security our country can offer? I think it's pretty much unbelievable, and it still is to this day. Thomas Matthew Crooks, everybody, of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. This kid, he outsmarted everyone there. Part of me wishes he was still alive, maybe so we could hire him for consulting, because clearly he knew more than the Secret Service did. Now, obviously, I say that tongue-in-cheek, but you get my point. And that's why we're still talking about it so much today. My brain cannot comprehend how a 20-year-old kid got away with actually being able to fire off the shots. These are the facts of it on the Congress website here in their investigation. I'll start with this. Crooks was photographed as a suspicious person 62 minutes before he opened fire, and snipers spotted him 20 minutes before the shooting. Goes on. At 5:10 p.m., Crooks was first identified as a person of interest. 5:30 p.m., Crooks was spotted with a rangefinder. At 5:52 p.m., Crooks was spotted by the roof, by Secret Service on the roof. At 6:02 p.m., Trump takes the stage then at 6:12. You see how my brain can't comprehend any of this, that snipers saw him on the roof with a rangefinder 10 minutes before President Trump took the stage. Why was he allowed to take the stage? Here's more on this. From the time Crooks fired his first shot to the gunman being killed was just 26 seconds, according to law enforcement officials. I think the language there in that report's a little bit messed up. I think the word just should be replaced with this. It should say it took snipers an excruciatingly long time, 26 seconds, to take him out. Let's run an exercise right now. I'm going to count for a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could go on and on. You see, 26 seconds, it's an eternity, especially in a moment like that. I want to bring this up just as well. At 5:10 p.m., Crooks was first identified as a person of interest. At 5:30, Crooks was spotted with that rangefinder. At 5:52 p.m., Crooks was spotted by the roof, on the roof by the Secret Service at 6:02 p.m. So you're telling me here the person of interest who was in the security zone looking around with that rangefinder was spotted on the roof, okay? A little bit more clarity in that. The rally should have been over. President Trump, hey, get him out of here. We're leaving. Look, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that went on with this. Like this as well. People on the ground filming and yelling for someone to do something when they saw Crooks on the roof. I can't for the life of me understand how in the world that this happened now. I know hindsight is 20/20, but looking back on it, this should have been easily prevented. This one should have been easy, everybody. And that's why we have to talk about it like this again. Like I said, it makes no sense whatsoever. So when you lay it out all on the table like this, I think you come down to 2 possibilities, right? One being it was just a complete screw up, the worst of all time, or there was something else going on. And you would think our federal agencies would want to be transparent about this. Now, obviously, I say that jokingly. When does that actually happen?
That is Bob Brooks, co-host of American Agenda on Newsmax, who hosted a Newsmax special over the weekend on the Butler assassination attempt because he was there and he is from that part of Pennsylvania, as he mentioned. Rita Cosby also spoke about it with former New York City mayor and former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani.
As you look back, and here it is, the 1-year mark tomorrow of that Butler shooting, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, since you began with Corey, we have to remember we think of it as the attempted assassination of the president and something that would have been a world-changing event, right? That God spared us from. But we did lose a great man. If that alone had been the only thing that happened, this would be a very devastating murder. And I am just uncomfortable with the way the whole investigation is being pursued. Even if we were talking about the murder of Corey Comparator at a rally like that, I would expect a full-scale, massive investigation. One may be going on, but I don't see a single bit of evidence of that. Now, on the second place, I have a spiritual view of this. People criticize that, but I do believe This was the day that God spared the man who can save Western civilization, Donald Trump. And then he spared him again a month and a half later. People don't realize that the one in Palm Beach was just as close to happening as this one. If the Secret Service agent hadn't spotted the guy in the bush, he had a perfect shot at Donald Trump. Twice, they almost killed this man and took him away from us. And we don't have a single additional fact about this a year later. Something is wrong. I'm sorry. Something is wrong. Everything in this situation, this one, was done wrong by the government people protecting him. I have gone over this with every Secret Service retired person I can find, including Dan Bongino. And I asked them, tell me what was done right. Don't tell me, I can tell you what was done wrong. And they can't tell me what was done right. I mean, a couple of them are just stand the perfect shot at the president, unguarded, unexamined for an hour and a half, a suspect running around for an hour and 15 minutes that they never resolve, and they're not supposed to go ahead if there's a suspect with an unresolved allegation or threat. And finally, they treated this like it was a meaningless event, and he had just been threatened by the Iranians. And instead, they never even meet with the local police. All three of those are career-ending actions on the part of these agents, and also deserve a tremendous investigation as to what's going on.
Rudy Giuliani on Saturday Report with Rita Cosby. And he mentioned Corey Compertor, right? There was a big rally in Butler yesterday in support of Corey Compertor and his family, which was great to see. Huge turnout, huge support, lots of love, and they raised lots of money. Meanwhile, President Trump and the First Lady marked the day by going to the FIFA World Cup match at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey because he was at his golf resort in Bedminster, New Jersey, with 82,000 fans in attendance and participating in the medal ceremony at the middle of the field after the match. The president did. The match was won by Chelsea, by the way, if you're a soccer fan. But yes, the president has been working with FIFA to bring the 2026 World Cup to the United States, which is mostly the reason that he was there. But to me, this is also a sign of defiance from the president, or was a sign of defiance from the president, like a big middle finger, right? Standing out there in front of 82,000 fans on the anniversary of the day that he was shot in the ear and nearly killed. Next year, the United States will share the World Cup with Mexico and Canada, the countries that the president is now threatening 30% tariffs on, along with the EU, which was just announced on Saturday. And already this morning, the word is that the European Union is looking to make a deal or hoping to make a deal with the United States before enacting any retaliatory tariffs. They want to get this settled as quickly as possible. If you missed it on Friday, the Treasury Department said that the tariffs led to another record month of money for the country. Customs duties coming into the U.S., $26.6 billion, up from $22.2 billion in May, which was also a record. This happening while the president and the first lady were in Texas, meeting with officials and victims' families, right? This was all good stuff. Then we went into the weekend with a lot of questions and reactions, mostly negative, surrounding the Trump administration's announcement earlier in the week on the Epstein case. And now that there is supposedly no client list, and I have to go through this step by step because it was a monumental weekend of events. Rudy Giuliani mentioned Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, who somehow became the center of this whole thing. First, there was word that Dan Bongino was considering resigning over the mishandling of the case, and calls for AG Pam Bondi to resign or be fired started picking up steam. If you're on any social media, you know that this blew up on Friday night and especially on Saturday, when there was then word that FBI Director Kash Patel would resign if Bongino resigned. And we all know that Dan doesn't need any of this, right? If he feels like he was bamboozled or misled or even lied to, or it's going to hurt his reputation, he is out, right? But he too vowed to get to the bottom of it.
There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there.
So this was allegedly all due to Attorney General Pam Bondi's mishandling of the case. Then Kash Patel took to X to say that these are all conspiracy theories. This just isn't true. There is no rift in the administration, and he has no intentions of stepping down. More importantly, President Trump then took to Truth Social to defend Pam Bondi, saying she isn't going anywhere, or is anyone else. I intentionally refrained from posting or responding to any of this over the weekend because, one, I feel like any fracturing within the administration is bad, right? It's not good for the administration, not good for the Republican Party. And two, more importantly, we have no idea what the truth actually is. Conspiracy and accusations, including Epstein being a spy and working for Israel, are now all over the board. But I am sticking to what I said last week. People either lied about what evidence they had or what they knew, or maybe what they thought they knew in the past, or they're lying now. Either way, we were lied to, and either way, this is still bad. The president's massive post about this on Truth Social started out with him saying nobody cares about Epstein. And that clearly is not true, based on what's happening on social media and what happened at this weekend's Turning Point USA event.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap.
Nothing.
Release the Epstein files, am I right? Yeah.
Again, this is mainly young Republicans, young voters. Nobody cares about Epstein, but they do care that there is a blatant cover-up by the U.S. government and a slew of people who promised to get to the bottom of it. Now, there is one theory out there among many, many theories that Trump maybe wants to hold on to the information to have as his own ammunition and be able to hold it against people. And also because some of the people that could possibly be incriminated in this include some of his friends and possibly some Republicans. So this is where we're at today. And this isn't going to go away like some in the administration are hoping. So we will see starting today where this goes and what the administration's response is. And just like I said every day last week, we need a press conference from Bongino, Kash Patel, and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Not all hearsay and secondhand stuff. And we'll wrap it up with Tom Basile on the one big, beautiful bill.
There were many who said that it couldn't be done. One big bill that would fold in huge chunks of the Republican agenda. Any one of the major provisions of the bill would have been a major political and legislative lift, from tax cuts to the beginnings of Medicaid reform and boost to defense spending and money for border security. The 900-plus page bill also enshrines in law dozens of President Trump's executive orders, inked to overturn the left-wing policies of the Biden administration. From a political standpoint and the pure legislative logistics of it all, the BBB was a historic achievement. Now, however, may come the harder part for Republicans. They have to sell it. They have to get credit for it and tackle both deficit reduction and entitlement reform in meaningful ways. The sales job on this mammoth legislation really starts now with a national campaign to tell people what's actually in the bill that benefits their families, their businesses, and particularly when it comes to their personal economy. The big bill was a big deal, but the GOP has to work overtime to tell people what the big deal is all about. They need to get up on television with ads and a big public education campaign, and they need to do it fast. Most Americans likely have no idea just how the tax provisions of the bill will impact their families. Most Americans likely don't know about the increases to the standard deduction, already doubled in 2017, or huge increases to SALT tax deductions, or the new deductions for tips and overtime and Social Security and how all that works. Most likely don't know that the Republican Congress just passed perhaps the most significant measure to address our national savings crisis and income inequality in history with these new $1,000 investment accounts for children. The new business deductions for capital expenditures, huge. Those are going to lead to business expansion and job creation. The president and Republicans need to start personalizing the impacts of this, akin to what was done by the Bush administration 2 decades ago. They need to tell Americans how this impacts the average family, farm, and small business owner. The GOP allowed Democrats to turn the 2017 cuts into, quote, cuts for the wealthy without the requisite level of pushback to convince Americans otherwise. It was a tactic that Democrats used to their advantage in 2020, and Republicans can't make that mistake again.
Tom Basile is the host of America Right Now, Saturday mornings at 9 Eastern. Another highlight of the weekend, going back to the Turning Point USA event, was border czar Tom Homan absolutely shredding a heckler during his speech.
They got morons like this all over the country. This guy wouldn't know it's like the surface nation. This guy ain't got the balls to be an ICE officer. He hasn't got the balls to be a Border Patrol agent. This guy lives in his mother's basement. The only thing that surprises me, you don't have purple hair and a nose ring. Get out of here, you loser. And you're such a badass. Meet me off stage in 13 minutes and 50 seconds. I guarantee you he sits down to pee. Guaranteed.
Really good stuff there from border czar Tom Homan at that Turning Point USA event. There was also really good stuff from Wyoming Senator Barrasso on Meet the Press yesterday. He essentially blew up Christian Welker and the NBC Meet the Press narrative on several issues. In other news, it is looking more and more like pilot error was the cause of last month's Air India crash. Fuel control switches from the engine of the flight were moved from the run position to the cutoff position moments before the aircraft crashed. This according to a preliminary report released Saturday by India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. They're saying the two fuel switches were in the cutoff position, meaning they were cutting off fuel to the engine. So pilot error or who knows? On Wall Street, stocks open slightly lower with the tariff situation, and there are marquee bank earnings on deck this week that investors and the Fed will be paying close attention to as well. Bitcoin is at another all-time high this morning, $122,000. Ethereum has topped $3,000, and XRP is now pushing $3 at $2.95. Be sure to keep up with all of today's news and breaking developments on Newsmax N2 and at Newsmax.com. Don't forget, the news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon, American Agenda, The Chris Salcedo Show, Carl Higbee, Greta Van Susteren, Rob Schmidt tonight at 7, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for checking out the Newsmax Daily Podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, pay attention, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.